How's it going, everyone? My name's David and welcome back to another episode of the English channel. Today we are taking a look at a form of inversion which can be quite tricky for learners to master. To native speakers it can sound quite formal and they may be more familiar with it from authority figures they've annoyed in some way. So if you want to know how to make a more impactful sign that prohibits something for some reason, or more usefully, sound better when you're angry at someone, then continue watching to find out. This is the third part on inversion in English. In part 1, we looked at inversion after so and neither. In part 2, we looked at inversion after adverbials of location and direction. Today, we're going to be going over inversion after negative adverbials. So, sit tight and let's get started. A negative adverbial is a word or phrase which modifies a verb, adjective, another adverb, or even a whole sentence in some kind of negative or limiting way. Where they get placed in a normal sentence depends on their type. If it's a one or two word adverbial, they normally go before the verb. If it's an adverbial phrase which starts with a preposition, or if it's a phrase that begins with any, like any more or any longer, then it goes at the end of the sentence. In a normal sentence, someone might say, I never broke any lockdown rules, or I didn't break any lockdown rules in any way. To make the sentence sound more emphatic, we can shift the negative adverb to the front or the beginning of the sentence. So the sentences I just said could be, never did I break any lockdown rules. Or, in no way did I break any lockdown rules. So the basic form of this kind of inversion goes, negative adverbial, then the auxiliary verb, then the subject, then the main verb, and then the rest of the sentence. However, there are some important things to remember when we're using it. If the normal sentence doesn't have any auxiliary verbs, some form of do will need to be used as an auxiliary verb in the inverted form. And the main verb becomes a bare verb as the tense is now indicated by the do verb. Secondly, in the non-inverted sentence, if it is a negative sentence with an adverbial phrase going at the end and uses the word any, then for the inverted sentence, when the adverbial was placed at the beginning of the sentence, any is replaced with no and the negative auxiliary verb becomes positive. The last point I want to make about forming these kinds of sentences is with the adverbial only, where we have another word, such as only then, or only if, or only after, etc., then the sentences can get pretty long before we see the inversion. And importantly, if in a normal sentence, only is followed by the subject of the sentence, then we cannot invert it. So if I said the phrase, only you can save me, we cannot invert it to, only can you save me. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Like using inversion after so or neither, this kind of inversion is a form of subject auxiliary inversion. As a quick explanation, inversion can happen in two basic ways, what are called subject-verb inversion and subject-auxiliary inversion. They indicate what parts of the sentences are switched around. So in subject-verb inversion, the verb is placed before the subject. And in subject-auxiliary inversion, the auxiliary verb is placed before the subject. And a quick point about subject-auxiliary inversion. In all forms, if the normal sentence doesn't use an auxiliary verb, then we use do as an auxiliary verb in the inverted sentence. So a lot of the examples I've shown so far have been of a certain politician stressing a denial of improper behaviour. And this shows one way it gets used to emphatically deny something, but it gets used in other ways too. Like I said at the start of the video, signs which prohibit some kind of behaviour often begin with a phrase like under no circumstances. It also gets used in the not only but also sentence structure. So if I said something like, the man is not only incompetent but also a terrible liar, then we can invert this sentence to be, not only is the man incompetent, but also a terrible liar. It can also be used when criticizing someone or something as a way of emphasizing the rarity of its awfulness. So for example, if you heard the Spotify top 10, you may be tempted to say, I have rarely heard such garbage pretending to be music. And this could be inverted too. Rarely have I heard such garbage pretending to be music. Like this, we can use it to reprimand someone's terrible behaviour, although doing so can lead to accusations of pomposity, if done with a tone of entitlement. So for example, never have I been spoken to so rudely in all my life. Or, no longer will I tolerate such laziness from you. On the flip side, it gets used when praising someone or something. And in these cases, it's used to emphasize how good some aspect of it is. So if we had a non-inverted sentence like, I seldom drink such fine wine, Prime Minister, then we can invert it to, seldom do I drink such fine wine, Prime Minister. To recap, we've looked at inversion after negative adverbials, which can be quite a tricky thing to get the hang of, but if you can master it, you can sound way better when you're angry with someone. So, quiz time. Turn these sentences into their inverted forms. You have 30 seconds, or you can just pause the video. You ready? Go! That's going to be all for today. Thanks for watching everyone, and I'll catch you next time.